Right, so our journey continues. We continue to learn more and more about Ghana's energy future and the steps we really need to take to achieve that full capacity when it comes to producing energy for development. And our next guest is Todd Morse. Todd Morse is from the Energy for Growth Hub. They're the ones who brought the team together for this event here at IEA. Todd, it's great to meet you.
Great to be here.
Indeed. And Todd, we've learned so much today about the detail of how Ghana is going about producing enough energy for its population for its future. But you've also paid a lot of attention to this subject, particularly Ghana's plans for the future. What exactly have you learned about our energy mix and perhaps our energy plan going forward?
Sure. So, I mean, everyone who lives in Ghana knows that the power system here is a problem. You even have this wonderful term, "dumsor."
Yeah.
And so clearly the power sector and the energy sector more broadly is essential to Ghana's future, for Ghana to become a middle-income country, for Ghana to create all of the jobs that its young people need, for Ghana to meet its industrial goals. And one thing I've noticed is that Ghana, like many countries, has prioritized first energy access. They want to get electricity into every Ghanaian's home. That is a wonderful goal. Ghana's made tremendous progress. You're somewhere around 85%. That's great. You're on track to get close to 100% very soon. But electricity in everyone's home does not create jobs. And you need a different component of the energy sector to support industrialization, to support factories, to support commercial farms, and for all of Ghana's young people who work in the IT sector, you need data centers, you need air conditioning, you need all of that hidden infrastructure of a modern economy, all of which is energy intensive. So while Ghana is making great progress on access for everyone at home, it still needs to build a reliable, low-cost energy system to support everything else in the economy.
Now let's look at whether or not Ghana is doing this. Not so long ago, 5 years ago, we were in the middle of doing so.
Yes.
And our government was doing emergency power purchasing. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, we emerged from that particular crisis. Some say we're simply marking time to the next one. I certainly hope they're wrong, but we've seen this before. So, honestly, having come out of emergency power purchasing, is this country planning for a future where there is no doom? So are we planning the energy mix properly, determining how much solar, how much natural gas, how much of all the different sources available to us, and are we adaptable to change?
So in some ways, Ghana is going to behave like every country, which is you look at your natural resources, you look at all of your available options, and you try to figure out what is the most efficient, what's the least cost option for building an energy system to support what you're trying to achieve. So Ghana has actually done a lot of planning around this, and on paper, a lot of the ideas make a lot of sense. Ghana is using natural gas, Ghana is using its hydro resources, Ghana is trying to increase its solar resources, and Ghana is even making a long-term plan to add nuclear into the mix. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know, but that's a good indicator of a government that's thinking 10 or 15 years down the line. Where the picture is not so bright is that the plans sometimes don't fit with the reality of what the decisions that are made. Some governments, and Ghana is one of them, they kind of sign one deal at a time. A company comes here and proposes, we'll build a power plant, here are the terms, should we do it or not? You sign yes, but no one is making that decision. Is this part of our plan? Do we need this power plant? is this power plant the best option we have right now? And I would say, given, I don't live here, so I don't know all of the details, but looking at all of the power purchase agreements that the government has signed, it doesn't line up with what the government's plans are. So that looks like a little bit of a mismatch, and that's an important role for civil society to play, to hold the government accountable to their own plans. You say we're trying to do this, so why are we doing these projects? One other thing I'll mention in Ghana is that there's always a focus on generation. I think Ghana has around 4,000 installed megawatts. That's a good achievement. It's really increased. But by focusing only on generation, sometimes you lose perspective on some of the other pieces to make the system work. One is the transmission infrastructure has to be well maintained and has to work in a way that can deliver all of that power to the customers that need it. You want to make sure that the energy that you're paying for is delivered in a way that it fits the customer base. So there are some customers that can deal with the intermittency of solar, no problem. There are other industries that absolutely cannot be intermittent. They need low cost, it must be stable. So that's the job of the planners and the politicians to figure out what are the industries we want to grow, and what's the power system that will support those objectives.
China is soon going to start processing about $2 billion worth of bauxite here in Ghana as part of a barter deal.
Okay.
This is going to demand quite a lot of energy. Do you see that we've planned for that? Do you see that Ghana has, in all that you've observed, have you seen planning for that amount of industrial operation?
So I don't know any details about this particular project. What I do think has been the case, I'd say two things. If you're doing large industrial processing, which is very energy intensive and where the cost of energy matters a lot in the final competitiveness of the firm, you need a power system that can deliver on that. Otherwise, the entire project will fail. The other thing I would say is that working with the Chinese has many benefits. So China comes with an integrated plan. They will have manufacturing and the power. Maybe there's some further up and downstream financing or supply chain issues that can be very useful for Ghana if they're looking for a package deal, if we're trying to get industrialization going. But China's presence is maybe even more useful as a lever on the West, in that the West doesn't operate with that integrated model, and the West has some very strong and particular views about what kinds of power systems a country like Ghana should have. And the alternative of turning to China, which has different views on that, is an important lever for the government. So really, the government of Ghana, I say this as a United States citizen who used to work in the State Department, the government of Ghana should be playing the Americans off the Chinese, and the Chinese off the Indians, and the Indians off the Europeans, to get the best deal for Ghana. And that is where the planning and the politicians need to come together so that decisions are made in what's in the best long-term interest of the country. And you absolutely should be playing the outside investors and donor community off of each other.
Now, I mean, you say you're encouraged by what you see on paper. The problem is where it matches with reality. But even talking about what's on paper, for example, if I wanted to know by the year 2030 how much natural gas, how much hydro, how much coal, how much nuclear Ghana wants to be using, is that information available?
So you could model that. you can make some certain assumptions. And in some ways, those different energy, so first, there's a two-step process here. One is, how much energy do you think Ghana could consume in 2030? There's ways to kind of model that out. You might be right, you might be wrong. I think most countries, especially at the stage of development where Ghana is, when you're relatively fast growing and you're on a steep path toward middle income status, you kind of want to overbuild, right? So you want to make sure that the energy system is not a constraint on growth, but that the energy system is liberating entrepreneurial activity and productive potential. So there are some models you can look at other countries. You know, if Ghana goes from where it is today and the income of the country is going to double, let's say in 8 or 10 years, what would be a reasonable assumption about what the energy consumption would look like, and then you build toward that goal. And you will get it wrong, but that would give you a rough idea of where Ghana needs to be. And what you would hope is that Ghana would be at a place where energy was abundant, it was reliable, it was available if you needed it, but you didn't overbuild so much that you bankrupted the system. Now, what that mix would look like, in some ways, things are interchangeable. Coal and hydro and gas, because they're more dispatchable, you can mix and match them. You can exchange them. Solar, which Ghana has a lot of solar potential that has not yet been tapped, is not as switchable because it's not as reliable. The sun, it only shines part of the day. Storage is still very expensive. It's a little seasonal, so that's not immediately replaceable. So thinking of gas and solar as, we can just swap those out is not exactly right. In fact, pairing them together makes a lot of sense. Gas, for instance, is very easy to turn on and off. They have these peaker plants that can pop on and off quickly. So matching gas with solar is usually it's a good strategy, because you can crank out the cheap solar when the sun is there, and when it goes off, the gas kicks in. So really thinking about how those pieces fit together is an important part of the long-term plan.
And speaking of long-term plans, you mentioned that there are models that you can use to work these things out. But I'm pretty sure if I wanted to know the United States plan for energy by 2030, I could probably find that out on my phone.
Yes, you could.
Yeah. So that's, I guess, is what I'm asking. Have these models been run? And are we using that information to plan? Is there a plan that is taking information from models like this? So that if I went, maybe not on my phone, but if I walked to the office of the Energy Commission, for example, I would see this information.
So I don't know the answer to that. So that's a good question for an enterprising journalist to find out. What are Ghana's plans? I've seen some of them. What I have seen from Ghana is very detailed. All models and plans have embedded assumptions. The assumptions seem relatively reasonable to me. But I'm a regular visitor to Ghana, but I don't live here. I'm not Ghanaian. I couldn't say how closely the government is hewing to that. It doesn't look like it at initial glance that they are, but that would be for civil society, for the media, for other politicians to try to hold them to that. I do think, though, what's different today than even 5 or certainly 10 years ago is that the amount of data available about energy and the tools for data analytics, for geospatial analysis, for using satellite imagery to try to do smart energy planning, we're so far ahead of where we were. It's very exciting. There's a lot of potential for things like remote sensors, Ghana is always a focal country of the world. It's always been a bellwether for everything, for economics, for democracy, and also, obviously, there's a lot of attention on Ghana's energy sector.
Now, another thing we have to be is adaptable, because things change. I mean, not so long ago in the US, you were using about 50% coal. Now it's suddenly 30%. You've got other alternatives. So a country has to be reactive or adaptable.
Yes.
you see that in Ghana?
So, look, there are some decisions that you make now that have a 30-year, echo effect. If you're building a power plant today, you hope that it will be running in 30 years, so you can get locked in. You do want to adapt. You want to try to foresee. Where the market is going, where the technology is going. But anyone who tells you that they know what the price of oil will be in 2 years, much less 10 years, is lying. And anyone that tells you they know what the future energy system will look like in 5 years also is, they probably have an educated guess, but no one really knows. So you do want to build in some of that adaptability. We also don't know what kinds of industries are going to be Ghana's comparative advantage. So today it might be oil and gas, it might be cocoa processing, it might be gold mining. Maybe in 5 or 10 years this will become a data data processing hub. Well, that would require a very different energy system than a mining-driven economy. I don't think mining is going away. But as your economy evolves, you want the energy system to evolve with it so that you can adapt. You can adapt over time. So I would hope that Ghana would be able to do that.
Well, I certainly hope so too. Todd, Moss, this was fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to be with you.